Electronic competition had become among the top sporting events, and with advancements in technology, the internet was omnipresent and electronic competition had permeated into everyone's lives. This new form of electronic competition had overtaken many older sports, and throughout the world, it was known as the most widely accepted sporting entertainment program. For entertainment, other than film, music, and live streams, there was one other major player, and that was gaming. Its place in the new era was much higher than that of football, basketball, or other sports. Electronic competition also had no lack of stars. The main team members of the 5 esports clubs of Yanzhou had influence comparable to the A-listers of Sci-Fi Wing, and every time they participated in large-scale competitions, these main team members would take the stage at the same time, so the influence they had was naturally even bigger. Song Miao lamented, "The drama series that I was watching is going to have a break after today. I have to wait till February or March next year to catch the next episode. No choice, if it continues on like this, it will die out," Zhu Wen said. Battle of the Century, which was about to be released, had captured most of the attention and popularity. Movies and online television had seen a decline since the start of the year. During July and August, there had been a sharp drop in viewership. If it continued on till September, many investors would be disappointed with the results. Hence, other than a few highly popular drama series, many other programs went into a rest period, giving way to Battle of the Century. Yesterday in the chat group, I heard those from the film department mentioning that the gamer actors, those dual-profession celebrities, have been recalled by their clubs. Probably to prepare for the publicity that's to come, Rodney added in. Gamer actors, dual-profession celebrities. Feng Zhao totally did not understand this. It means that they are actors and, at the same time, they are professional gamers too, Zhu Wen explained. Some gaming stars would enter into showbiz as they played. For some, they would sign contracts after their prime and hold both professions. And there were some that were discovered when they were still schooling. After signing on with a company, the company would arrange for them to enter professional gaming competitions. All of them can be considered a form of investment by the company and have been lying in wait for the past couple of years just for this time. However, I feel that, even if the company manages to recall all these people back, it will not have much of an impact. Just recalling what happened 10 years ago. Oh, right, boss, 10 years ago, you were still in secondary school, right? You probably didn't pay much attention to this, Zhu Wen said. Feng Zhao understood what Zhu Wen said by not much of an impact on the second day. The previous day, there had still been a number of movie and film stars appearing on the headlines of each major entertainment media's news, but today, all the trending news by the big media firms was dominated by news related to esports clubs. With this widespread news coverage, movies and music both took a back seat. The big esports clubs had all started preparations a year ago. They had declined invitations to all sorts of competitions, and even when they did participate, they only sent out their second-string or third-string players. They had handpicked gamers from all sort of genres and had focused on Battle of the Century, training intensely for it. Some clubs were even rumored to have engaged a military school for a few months of military training. All the clubs had been in confined training, all for today, where they would remove the secrecy surrounding them. When Feng Zhao was watching the entertainment news, he realized that of all the trending stars that appeared, 90% were from Yanzhou's big 5 esports clubs. A certain gaming superstar riding an automated car could also start trending. And this was just the start. August 26, Kansas City's People Stadium, the largest stadium in Yanzhou. One of Yanzhou's big 5, Big Dipper Esports Club held a pre-battle pledging ceremony. 1 million fans went in person, and those unable to enter just stood directly outside the stadium. August 27, at Kin's Business Center's highest building complex, at the Jungle of Light Public Square, Transcendental Esports Club held a pre-battle pledging ceremony, and fast crowds were present. August 29, 2S Esports Club rented out Yanzhou's largest garden on a lake to hold its pre-battle pledging ceremony. The live broadcast nearly jammed from viewership. August 30, Boom Esports Club held their pre-battle pledging ceremony on the summit of Yanzhou's highest mountain. Photographers nearly froze. August 31, HWR Esports Club held their pre-battle pledging ceremony on a virtual stage. Team Captain Jess said, "We have the lowest profile," then proceeded to display a video of the team driving cars and motorbikes from the old era, causing fans to scream non-stop. A digital fan fainted from excitement and was sent to the hospital. Although the game was to be officially released in October, during the entirety of September, the teams would all undergo adaptive training. To the business-minded esports clubs, the battle had already started early. September 1, 8 a.m., Fiery Bird released an official announcement. The Battle of the Century age restriction would be altered. From the original 16 years and above, it was raised to 18 and above. A clear-cut rule: people below 18 were prohibited from playing. An hour after the announcement was released, several hundred 17-year-olds staged a sit-in outside the entrance of Fiery Bird's office, pressing Fiery Bird to lower the age restriction from 18 to 17. After that, their parents were called. Fiery Bird's official spokesperson explained that protesting at the entrance would do no good. The limit had been set by the Electronic Competition Union in conjunction with other relevant departments for the good of everyone's physical and mental well-being. Because of the internet, kids in the new era matured faster. Smarter kids knew a lot. However, this did not mean that their mentalities were mature. One's outlook on the world, life, and values could be seriously influenced by small matters. Previously, Fiery Bird had set the age restriction as 16, but now, after some prudent consideration, they had determined it necessary to be raised. The game was too dangerous for minors. Feng Zhao received a call from Su-ho early in the morning. As he had not reached the age restriction, Su-ho could not play Battle of the Century. Thus, he had called Feng Zhao to relieve some of his misery, and his motive was to borrow curly hair from Feng Zhao. Su-ho had bought a few decent shepherd dogs and had hired a professional to specially train them. However, the results were not so good, so he wished to loan curly hair for a bit. Who knows, maybe with curly hair to spur them on, those dogs would learn faster. The same had happened back at Shanmu Farm. Feng Zhao did not agree right away, he needed to consider first. After ending the call with Su-ho, Feng Zhao called curly hair over. Do you want to head to a Muzhou farm to play? Su-ho called and wants to borrow you. Woof. Curly hair's tail wagging was extra jubilant, seeming like he was very excited. He preferred carefree running on real grasslands. The house was a little too small, he had gotten used to running in fields. After returning to Kin, he had felt that there was too little space. Remember what I told you before. Make sure you guard the farm properly when you are over there. Woof. I'll get Su-ho to come fetch you. Woof. Curly hair frisked about happily in the house. When Feng Zhao told Su-ho the news, Su-ho was very happy. He had been waiting for these words. I will leave Muzhou and pick him up right away. Ding. Suddenly, there was a new notification. Feng Zhao gave Su-ho his address and said a little more before ending the call and checking the notification. Your express delivery is arriving. Please be ready to receive it. What are your thoughts on the express delivery? McDonald's, KFC or Pizza Hut? Feng Zhao's unit was on the top floor of the building. When he'd bought over the apartment, half of the top floor had been a garden. Since buying it over from Shuijing, Feng Zhao had not made many changes, only expanding the parking space slightly. After receiving the notification, Feng Zhao stepped outside. He did not have to wait long before he saw a black dot approaching from the distance. The black dot increased its speed. It was a transport drone. When it arrived at on top of the parking space, it slowly descended. A black metal case was lowered onto the space. Feng Zhao verified receiving the goods and the express delivery drone left. The case was encrypted. When Feng Zhao scanned in the details of his identity, the case automatically opened. Inside the metal case was another transparent case made from some unknown material. Within it was a humanoid-shaped machine that looked like a robot. Feng Zhao was puzzled when had he ordered a robot. But after reading the description on the transparent case, Feng Zhao understood. This was not a robot, it was the 10th generation game console that Fiery Bird's headquarters had sent over. The machine was mainly white in color with black veins running across it and the red Fiery Bird insignia. So this is their new gaming console. The thought had never crossed his mind. At this moment, Feng Zhao's bracelet notified him of an incoming call. It was from an unknown number. Feng Zhao considered for a bit before answering the call. Hello, is this Mr. Feng Zhao? A somewhat boorish voice asked. Yes. That's me. Hi, I am Zachary, an engineer from Fiery Bird's Yanzhou department, in charge of installation of the machine and servicing. We have received notification that you have accepted the console. May I ask if you have time today? If you are free, we can be at your place in 20 minutes to help you install the console and to guide you on its usage. If you are busy, we can reschedule for another time. I don't have anything else going on. I will be at home. All right, we will have to trouble you to wait for another 20 minutes. My assistants and I will leave for your place right away. Since there were engineers coming over to install the console, Feng Zhao temporarily left the case lying there. Boss, what is this? A robot for the chores. Zuo Yu had come over to deliver a set of files that required Feng Zhao to sign. As there was a case in the parking space, Zuo Yu had to park the car at the public garage below before coming up. It's not for housework, it's Fiery Bird's 10th generation game console, Feng Zhao told him. That fabled 10th generation game console. Zuo Yu was still full of doubt. This is a game console. Only after reading the description on the clear case did Zuo Yu believe that Feng Zhao was not pulling his leg. It really is. The fabled 10th generation looks like this. What were the designers thinking? Although his words about Fiery Bird's designer seemed full of disdain, Zuo Yu was still very curious and kept circling the case. Knowing that the engineers were about to arrive, he was not in a rush to leave. He had planned to return immediately to the company after getting Feng Zhao to sign the files, but these files were not especially urgent. As long as they were returned by today, it would be fine. He wanted to stay longer and take a look. If it had been a helmet or a cabin-style gaming console, Zuo Yu would not have been that curious or interested, even if it was a new model from Fiery Bird. However, this gaming console shape aroused the curiosity in him. It's probably an exoskeleton type. I never thought I would live to see the day there would be an exoskeleton type design of a game console. It's a pity the appearance doesn't look impressive enough. As Zuo Yu examined it, he clicked his tongue in wonder and could not help but open the case and touch it. Feng Zhao understood what Zuo Yu meant by exoskeleton. The hard shell on the surface of the body protecting the soft interior of prawns, crabs, and bugs was known as an exoskeleton. Humans also had related projects as a means to protect the relatively weak and fragile human body. Actually utilizing machinery as an exoskeleton had been used during the end of days. During that period, there were scientists that had started an exoskeleton project, but the technology had not advanced enough and Feng Zhao hadn't gotten to wear an exoskeleton combat suit in his past life. In the new era, during the period when mankind had started exploring other planets, these technologies had advanced rapidly, but the majority of their use was in the military and for medical treatment. The general public's deepest impression of exoskeletons were their use as armor by the Outer Space Corps. Its use in entertainment was not much due to the high manufacturing costs, and there were no companies willing to try. No one would have expected that Fiery Bird's 10th generation would choose to use an exoskeleton type. It seemed like, when Fiery Bird had announced that the 10th generation would have revolutionary changes, they meant that they had started on an exoskeleton project and it had become reality. It's a pity that it is just a game console. How great would it be if it were a real power exoskeleton? There was a hint of envy in Zuo Yu's eyes. Have you worn that sort of power suit? Feng Zhao asked. Nope, I enlisted in the military very early. My studies were all completed in military school. When I was assigned my posting, I was sent to the anti-terrorism unit and could not get out. Zuo Yu was full of regret. Could not get out meant that he could not leave the planet? This had been a regret of Zuo Yu's. He had originally wanted to continue making a living in the military and one day finally get out, but because of a few mistakes, he had been discharged from the military. However, Fiery Bird's 10th generation console made him anticipate again. Fiery Bird's goal is probably to let more people get a kick. Those power exoskeletons sold online are made from a different material, and the technology and feeling cannot compare to the real ones. Since Fiery Bird has made the 10th generation as an exoskeleton, given their reputation, the feeling after wearing it might not be same as the real ones, but it should be close. As Feng Zhao and Zuo Yu were talking, a flying car came. There was no space to park the car, so a middle-aged person in working attire hopped off. He showed Feng Zhao his working ID and said, "Hi, I am the engineer that spoke to you just now, Zachary." Zachary looked like a worker from a Muzhou farm. He was tanned, full of vigor, and his rough hands were full of calluses. After the self-introductions, Zachary pressed somewhere on the transparent case and 4 wheels appeared. Zachary pushed the case aside and let his helper land the car. "Mr. Fang, where do you want the machine to be placed?" Zachary asked. "This room." Feng Zhao opened a room he had prepared beforehand. There was nothing else inside the room. Zachary pushed the case into the room and he and his helper got down to work. While assembling the machine, he explained to Feng Zhao the superiority the 10th generation machine had over the 9th generation one. This is the power exoskeleton model, or mobile clothing. It is very convenient and doesn't burden you when being worn. For example, if you are tired, you can just eat, drink, or sleep in the suit. Other than bathing, you can basically wear this for everything. This also fulfills the desires towards the outer space core that some gamers have. If you can adapt to this, even if you wear the outer space core power suit in future, you will not find much of a difference. Of course, this exoskeleton does not have the same functions as the power suits of the outer space core. After all, the power suits of the outer space core are weapons, and this is just a game console. It can only imitate that sort of feeling. Other than that, it will let you have a more realistic experience of gaming. As Zachary was explaining, Zuo Yu was eager to give it a try. "Boss, later, after you have tried it, could I try it out too?" Feng Zhao nodded. "Sure. After the installations and inspection were completed, Zachary instructed Feng Zhao on how to put it on. Actually, it was not really complicated, as it was all automated as long as he confirmed his identity and usage rights. Feng Zhao could feel himself wearing an outer shell, but he did not feel it stifling or restrictive. Waving his hands, swinging his shoulders, walking, jumping, all these actions felt very unhindered. What Zachary had said about wearing it to eat, drink, and sleep was all true. Okay, now we can enter the adapting phase. I recommend lying down. If you remain standing, once you enter the game for a long period of time, your nerves and muscles will not feel exhausted, as the suit bears the strain, but once you leave the game, you will experience the side effects. Sitting is fine too, but I still recommend lying down, Zachary instructed. Feng Zhao did not proceed to find a bed, instead just lying down on the floor. Following Zachary's instructions, he entered the adapting phase. It was as if his soul had been removed from his body. Feng Zhao felt himself standing at an unfamiliar place. He could no longer feel the original feeling of lying on the floor. In front of him was a basketball, and his surroundings were transformed into a basketball court. The ground below him was a wooden floorboard, and the clothes he was wearing were basketball attire and shoes. Mr. Feng, you have now entered the adapting sequence. You can freely exercise. We will monitor your degree of adaptation. Zachary's voice seemed to be just beside his ear. Feng Zhao did not waste any time. He walked over and picked up the basketball. He could clearly feel the lines of the basketball in his hands. Indeed. Very real. Feng Zhao started trying to bounce the ball. Thump. 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 The sound of the basketball smashing against the ground, combined with the sound of the basketball whizzing through the air, stimulated his excited senses. Feng Zhao bounced the ball and moved forward. His bouncing became faster and faster as he got more proficient with the dribbling movement. In the room, Zachary watched the charts displayed by the measurement apparatus and then looked at the comprehensive numbers at the side. On it was displayed a 60. The maximum value was 100. Normally there would be no issues upon reaching 60. Glancing at these numbers, a relaxed smile appeared on Zachary's face. Not too bad, hitting 60 means that you can use it often, your adaptability is good. With another month of adapting, you might even hit 70. Zachary had not finished speaking when he lost his voice. He stared blankly at the screen displaying the adaptability value. Originally stabilizing at 60, it had begun to move again. 61. 64. 68. 72. What had he just said? With another month of adapting. In less than 30 minutes, the adapting value had jumped from 60 to 75. TSK, this adaptability is indeed strong. Zachary's assistant exclaimed in astonishment. The value stabilized at 75. Zachary laughed and shook his head. Never expected that Mr. Feng's adaptability to the new machine would reach 75. I'm afraid some people in the company are going to be disappointed. If Mr. Feng hadn't adapted to the machine well, the moment he put it up for sale, quite a number of people in the company would have bought it immediately, but now it seems like these people won't even get a chance. Master. Zachary's helper, Boken, shouted out. What? Zachary asked. He was sending messages and thus did not look up. The value changed again. Zachary was displeased. Nonsense, the value is always changing constantly. It is fine as long as it modulates around a certain range. Have you forgotten all that I taught you? No, take a look. Zachary lifted his head up to look at the value of the screen, and his eyes slowly widened. The value that had originally stabilized around the 75 mark had began to rise upward again. 78, 79, 80, 81. Although it was not rising that quickly, it was indeed increasing. This could not be explained rationally anymore. This adaptability is way too strong, right? Thinking of something, Zachary turned his head and asked Zuo Yu. Is your boss really an artist? Does he meddle with anything else? Zuo Yu was equally baffled. He really is only a composer. For adapting training, other than basketball, Feng Zhao played football and badminton, rode a bicycle, drove a car, practiced archery, and many other events. The realism he felt got more and more intense, as if he was really standing in an empty room and playing with all this equipment, not inside a game. When Feng Zhao exited from the adaptive training mode, he was sweating profusely. As he separated from the game console, only then did he realize the casual attire he was wearing was entirely soaked and his entire body felt as if he had really done all those sports. How mysterious. Feng Zhao looked at the taut muscles on his arm before using the sleeves of this shirt to wipe sweat off his face. He turned to face Zachary and Boken, who were standing there in a daze. Are they any problems? Feng Zhao asked. No. No problems. Zachary glanced at the display showing a bright red 91 inches, then looked at Feng Zhao, who was still standing there, and asked, "Do you feel anything abnormal? For example, headaches or no sense of balance?" Feng Zhao walked a few steps, then jumped on the spot. "Everything seems to be fine. Only, at the moment when I was leaving the training mode, I felt a little dizzy, but I was all right after a few seconds." Zachary checked all the results displayed on the screen that showed readings of his bodily functions. All these had been taken when Feng Zhao was in the training mode. These readings showed that Feng Zhao was not lying and he was perfectly fine. When using the 10th generation for the first time, separating from the console for the first time will indeed cause a little dizziness. In the future, after using it a few times, it will not occur anymore. Taking a look at the final figures, Zachary lamented. "Mr. Feng, how was the experience of using it?" "Very good," Feng Zhao replied. "It's very easy to get addicted." A proud smile appeared on Zachary's face. "To be able to let players become addicted is our greatest accomplishment. Seems like Mr. Feng also knows how to find joy in games. It seemed like this gaming console would not be sold after all." "Boss, can I try it?" Zuo Yu asked in eager anticipation. Feng Zhao looked toward Zachary. "Can he use it?" Zachary nodded his head. "This machine's owner is you, Mr. Feng. As long as you authorize it, he will be able to use it." Zachary taught Feng Zhao how to set up the authorized users. "All done. This gentleman can enter and try it out," Zachary said. Once Zuo Yu entered the training mode, Feng Zhao saw that the last screen in front of Zachary displayed a 76. Zachary then explained to Feng Zhao the meaning of that number. "This gentleman is also adapting very well." Zachary watched the numbers jumping up, turned his head to Feng Zhao and asked, "He is your bodyguard, right?" "Yes." Feng Zhao saw the misgiving in Zachary's eyes, so he asked, "Are there any problems?" Zachary thought about what to say before shaking his head. "Nothing." He just thought that this bodyguard's adaptability would probably not be higher than this young man who said he was a composer. Although the value rose up, this was probably because Zuo Yu had used a lot of similar machinery. Just now, when Feng Zhao had been using the machine, Zachary had talked to Zuo Yu and knew that Zuo Yu was an old hand. Zachary's eyes were on the charts and numbers on the screen, and Feng Zhao was watching the machine lying on the floor in wonder. Just now, he had been the one wearing the gaming suit and lying there. Being totally immersed in the adaptive training mode, he had not known what the situation outside was like. Now he knew that, when he had been vigorously exercising in the adaptive training mode, outside of the mode, his body had seemed sedated, only slight trembles being seen. The machine that covered the surface of the body was full of sensors. These sensors would gather all sorts of data and would transmit it to a processor. Finally, it would appear as charts and numbers in front of Zachary. The adaptability value that was at 76 rose to 87 before coming to a complete stop. Zuo Yu separated from the machine with a satisfied grin and was soaking wet. Indeed, the experience compared to all the older game consoles is way more intense. It is worthy of being called the 10th generation. Most likely, compared to the real power suits, there won't be much difference. 87. The grin on Zuo Yu's face turned into shock when he saw the value. "I only got 87. He still remembered that Feng Zhao had achieved a value of 91 a short while back. Zachary grudgingly said, "Exceeding 85 is considered first rate, this is already very high. My boss got a 91 just now." Zuo Yu felt that his own ability had been looked down upon. "Your boss has an impressive adaptability," Zachary said. "I was from the special forces. Your boss is still your boss." Zachary could only think of this reason. Confirming that usage would not be hindered and having gotten an adaptability of 90 plus, Zachary was not the least bit worried that Feng Zhao would encounter any problems. He sent a copy of a detailed guide to Feng Zhao and left a means of contact. "If there are any issues with the machine, just call this number. Even if I am not free, my colleagues will rush over and help you service it." As they had other tasks, Zachary did not stay for too long. After exhorting a few important points to Feng Zhao, he left along with his assistant. The casing that had originally been used to store the 10th generation machine was also taken away by them. After showering and changing into a set of clean and dry clothes, Feng Zhao called out to Zuo Yu, who was still sitting there bewildered. They would be heading back to the company together. Although he was now a manager that did not need to handle matters personally, he still had to return occasionally to keep an eye on things. The game console had already been delivered and installed. In the next few days, he would probably spend a lot of time playing. Today, he wanted to head down to the company and ask if there were any more documents that required his signature or approval. After a round in the virtual projects department, Feng Zhao held on to a set of documents that Zhu Zhen had handed him and took the elevator to the film department to check on some of the programs that Polar Light and the film departments were collaborating on. Entering the elevator, Feng Zhao noticed 5 others inside, an older manager and 4 youngsters who seemed like university students, 3 guys and a girl. Most likely, the parking garage above was full, so they needed to come up from the lower garages. The manager recognized Feng Zhao and laughed as he exchanged greetings. Manager Feng, heading to the top floor to give your report. Nope, I'm heading to the film department. You brought newcomers again. Feng Zhao remembered him bringing another group of youngsters a while back. Yeah, these 4 are here to receive priority development, the manager said, not hiding anything. Feng Zhao understood. These were probably part of the company's reserve strategy. With the entertainment market being dominated by gaming, the company would transfer over these dual-profession gamer actors and give them prioritized development. The 5 of them were also headed for the film department. When the elevator doors opened, that older manager did not step out first, instead making an after-you gesture to Feng Zhao. Originally, 2 of the youngsters had lifted their legs to step out, but seeing their manager do that, they retracted their step. After Feng Zhao was some distance away from the elevator, a few of the youngsters then asked their new manager, "Who is that?" "The number 1 in the virtual projects department." "You guys are new here, so you wouldn't be familiar," the manager told them. Also a manager. A youngster wearing a baseball cap pointed in the direction he'd left. Finding it hard to imagine, he continued, "That guy is a department manager. He looks to be around the same age as me. Is he famous?" "Yes, he is the manager of the virtual projects department. A while back, Fiery Bird sound effects department had even mentioned him. Back then you guys were having SEAL training and did not pay attention to entertainment news. That man is really impressive. The virtual projects department rose up under his watch, and he is the new star of music composition circles. He is so great he can even discuss terms with director Duan." Back then, everyone shunned the virtual projects departments, but now they're finding ways to try and squeeze themselves into the department. The benefits are great, wages are high, and the prospects are plentiful. Sounds really impressive, but we do not have much of a relationship with him. He is not part of the gaming circle, a short-haired girl playing with a gaming device in her hands said indifferently. That's true, but in the future, if you meet him around the company, do take notice, the manager exhorted. Got it. The 4 youngsters agreed but did not really think much of the matter. Music and composition seemed too far away for them, and they would not be joining the virtual projects department. No matter how impressive the other person was, it did not really affect them much. At most, just giving way to him in the company would do. When Feng Zhao found the film department's manager He Hao, he was watching a live broadcast of an interview. He Hao knew that Feng Zhao did not know much about the gaming circles and thus explained, 2SE Sports Club's Ace Kazimo's popularity is on the uprise. Thinking of something. He Hao laughed. This brat even slighted your department today. He Hao told Feng Zhao about this morning's news. At that time, Feng Zhao had been at home for the installation of the game console and had not paid attention to the news. This brat was not satisfied with Fiery Bird's choice of a virtual idol to be the spokesperson. He felt that they were the most professional and wrote a few letters to Fiery Bird's headquarters requesting a change in spokesperson. He felt that endorsement of a game should be done by the most professional and outstanding people. Seems like Fiery Bird's side gave him some slack, so Kazimo seemed particularly happy today. He thinks that the virtual projects department have gotten all they can for the last time and won't be so lucky in the future. These few reputable esports clubs were no longer having SEAL training. The reason for SEAL training was to keep their training methods and tactics secret. SEAL training was for the teams to get used to the game and come up with methods to tackle things they did not understand. When they started their practice, the image would not have been beautiful, and if videos were released, they might even lost fans. Now, though, after becoming proficient through lots of training, videos released now would be able to stir up lots of fans. In the new era, there were too many esports clubs. As they were still mainly business-driven, they need to guarantee their own strength and capture the hearts of fans. Especially at this juncture that only happened once every 10 years. From a business point of view, these esports clubs no longer needed to maintain their cold and indifferent attitudes. From time to time, they would release a few videos or accept interviews. For example, videos of Big Dipper Esports Club's captain taking his team out to drive cars from the old era, or videos of Boom's team riding motorcycles around the city as training. And this time, 2S Esports Club and Boom Esports Club had organized a practice match, and the event was motorbike racing. They had already spoken with Fiery Bird's branch, and when the time came, Fiery Bird would release a map on the public web for them to compete on. and K-Zemo was the main talking point of this practice match. In the interview, K-Zemo seemed very flamboyant. It's just a common old-era vehicle, more difficult to operate than modern vehicles, but I have had no trouble learning, and have mastered it rather easily. Actually, my house has a bike that is a replica of an old-era model, which I have been riding for the last few years. I haven't encountered much difficulty in games. The host of the program asked, "Why did you choose Boom Esports Club as your opponents for the practice match? This is your first practice match after the pledging ceremony, right?" K-Zemo waved it off with his hands. It can't be helped. Only Boom Esports Club has professional racing gamers. The others are too weak. There was an added emphasis on his last 3 words. There was no need to say what sort of reaction the other 3 clubs had when they saw the news. They were all termed as Yanzhou's 5 strongest, yet this brat actually publicly belittled them during an interview. You all also know that my other profession was a racer, and I won many youth racing championships. However, after I switched to electronic competition, I haven't taken part in these sort of competitions anymore, and I also didn't take part in this year's championships. Still, I feel that, on this level, I don't have any worthy adversaries. Even though I have not taken part in these championships, I have not stopped training for games. The vehicles during the old era were much harder to maneuver, but I am the best driver in my team. As he spoke, K-Mozi lamented, "I really wish I could pit myself against the generation from before the apocalypse." If you had the chance to compete against the older generations from before the apocalypse, who do you think would win? The host asked while laughing. Me, of course. K-Zemo flashed a victory sign toward the camera. The smile on his face was not the joking sort but a rather haughty one. He really felt this way. That little fellow is really full of himself, Feng Zhao suddenly said. He nodded his head in agreement when he heard Feng Zhao. That little fellow is a little crazy, but he does have a frightening talent. He came from a line of racers and he has a dual profession. He really has the ability to back up his words, though. But mentioning the older generation before the apocalypse is a little lacking in manners. Obviously he knows that it is impossible for these older generations to still be living, so who can prove that he is better than them? Only his words. Feng Zhao laughed but did not say more. The interview continued on. K-Zemo did not feel like he had said anything wrong. He still continued emphasizing, "Actually, I feel that everyone should just face up to history. The older generations during the period of destruction have all been overglorified. All those mentioned in textbooks are too perfect and exaggerated. Just one look and you can tell they are all fake. Of all the videos that have survived from those periods, none of them have been able to prove the situations written in those textbooks. I am a professional racer, that's why I know best. Some of those things that are mentioned are really impossible. For example, the celebrated leader from the period of destruction Feng Zhao could ride a motorbike and shoot accurately. Even when his bike was knocked down, he could still flip a few times, free fall 20 meters, and still land properly and continue riding. Isn't this all nonsense? Did they think it was a sideshow? It's simply an insult to my IQ. Feng Zhao, speechless, little brat. The host of the broadcast gave a forced smile. Many viewers watching the broadcast online also approved of what he'd said and left comments requesting that portion be removed from history books. As the interview was ending, K-Zemo faced the screen. The model we are using for the competition is a motorcycle that Fiery Bird specially designed. The level of difficulty is really high. For all the newbies, I have a word of advice: don't bite off more than you can chew. Newbies should not court disaster and try it. When the time comes, just watching us will do. Feng Zhao exhaled sharply. Well. What do we have here? He did not pay much attention to Feng Zhao's reaction. He knew that many of these people who shared the same name as martyrs were more respectful and worshipped them more. They did not like hearing others badmouth their namesake. Thus, being unhappy with K-Zemo's words was normal. Those are the sort of people they are, don't lower yourself to that level, he consoled. Yeah. Feng Zhao smiled a little, but what he was thinking about, he could not mention to He Hao. Feng Zhao returned home from the office and checked the news. On the entertainment side, almost every entertainment media was reporting about the upcoming practice match between 2S and Boom Esports Club. This was an exhibition match before the official release, and it captured the attention of other players. Previously, Fiery Bird had released a small map for players to adapt to. Players who entered this map could watch from a bystander's point of view. They could experience the city and view the lifestyle of people from that period and various items that they used. And now Fiery Bird had released a portion of the map similar to the previous one, but the characters inside had all been removed. This map had been specially released for 2S and Boom Esports Club's practice match. After this practice match was over, it would be open to all players. In short, 2S and Boom, two of the strongest clubs, had collaborated with Fiery Bird's Yanzhou division to organize this practice match that benefited all parties. The news also mentioned the racing motorbike that Fiery Bird had designed, T-Rex. It was rumored that, in the game, T-Rex would be considered an uncommon item. Every continent had a set limit of 200 units, and all 12 continents combined would not have more than 2,400 units. Although it might seem like a lot, but compared to other items, this was considered scarce. Otherwise they would not have been considered uncommon. When the time came, obtaining one would depend on the person's capabilities, but before that, Fiery Bird would be borrowing 2S and Boom Gaming Club's practice match to advertise their T-Rex and excite players. The practice match was set at 10 a.m. on September 3rd. Suho had come over on the 2nd to borrow the dog and satisfy his craving, knowing that Feng Zhao had a 10th generation Fiery Bird game console. Unfortunately, he was still young and had limited access to a lot of games, so he could only watch with envy. Every day, he could only watch videos or highlight clips of games. When Suho left with curly hair, Feng Zhao logged onto Fiery Bird's public platform and entered the training mode. Here there were a few choices of heavy-duty motorbikes, but not the T-Rex model that was seen on the news. These motorbikes were surely less powerful, but for training purposes, they were more than enough. Feng Zhao had not ridden heavy-duty motorbikes in a long time. Normal motorbikes were easy to obtain, but this was his first time using one since he'd been reborn. In the latter stages of his past life, due to the decline of his body functions due to injuries and illnesses, the research team had come up with a new model of vehicles, but Feng Zhao had rarely used them. Waking up in the new era, these vehicles from the past had already been phased out and could no longer be accessed. Feng Zhao expected himself to be quite unaccustomed to it, but hearing the roar of the engine, a familiar feeling entered his mind and his senses started tingling. It seemed as if his memory had already coordinated with his body to the most suitable level. 4 hours later, Feng Zhao separated from the console, returning back to reality. His stimulated mind gradually became tranquil. Feng Zhao took a drink and walked to the window, admiring the beautiful glow of the city. He had entered the game in the afternoon, now it was already dark outside, but the city center would never become quiet just because the sun had set. The winds on the top floor were strong and cold. Feng Zhao finished his glass of water, shut the window, and smiled as observed the excited entertainment news. September 3rd, 8 a.m. Lots of people had already opened up Fiery Bird's Yanzhou division's live broadcast in anticipation. Although it was just a practice match, viewership was high. 2S and Boom eSport Club's fans were fervently stirring up the atmosphere, and some people were even betting on the outcome of the match. Feng Zhao noticed that there were slightly more people supporting a 2S win. They probably placed faith in Kazimo's many racing trophies. Feng Zhao realized that, in the Virtual Projects Department's group chat, Zhu Wen and the others had still been discussing who would win at 11 p.m. last night. It seemed like they would surely be catching the live broadcast. As Feng Zhao ate his breakfast, he briefly browsed through the news before he would enter the game and familiarize himself even more. Today's entertainment headlines were mostly dominated by 2S and Boom eSport Club's practice match. The other three teams of Yanzhou's Big Five were not going to miss this opportunity to evaluate their rival skills and ability either. Even if it was only a single practice match, they could still gauge their rival skill level by observing their proficiency with the equipment. A person who was able to use all sorts of equipment had the ability to survive in a world of chaos. This sentence applied in the real world, and it applied in games as well. At Big Dipper eSport Club headquarters, the main team was all present. This was their internal viewing area, and it was easy for them to hold discussions here as there were no other people from other gaming events. Who do you think will win? Probably 2S. Although that Kazimo fellow needs to be taught a lesson, we can't deny that he has skills and is very talented. If not for the fact that he was underage 10 years ago, we would probably have crossed swords with him. To become well known in the gaming circles so early, he should be worthy of the high salary 2S are paying him. I really hope Boom wins. If that Kazimo brat really wins, he won't even need to wait till tomorrow to start belittling us again. It's just riding a bike and he is acting all high and mighty. Even if he can ride well, it doesn't mean that he will have the last laugh. None of the great generals of the founding era were race car drivers. Seems like there was one who was a truck driver, the one from Jizu. Wasn't the Jizu one a discharged soldier before he became a truck driver? He is still a driver and can be considered as having a driving background, I guess. Speaking of that, the Kazimo brat even doubted the martyr Feng Zhao. Luckily at this time, people are more tolerant of this discussion, and the martyr Feng Zhao does not have any direct descendants. I reckon that if he had any surviving descendants, the brat would have been invited over for tea immediately after the interview. If he really had the guts, why did he not talk about great General Wu Yan, who was even more over-exaggerated in history textbooks? He knew that the martyr Feng Zhao did not have any descendants that would come looking for him. He might be arrogant, but he is not stupid. He knows which parties he cannot afford to offend. Team Captain Yi Yuan sighed. What a pity. Yi Yuan thought back to the words Kazimo had said during the interview. Many people online even joked that Feng Zhao's coffin would not be able to rest underground. Yi Yuan's history was decent, and he deeply worshipped the Yanzhou leaders who had left a deep mark. There was only that unfortunate one who did not have the luck to survive one more year. How would the Wu family have developed then? It was a pity, given the great circumstances that the Wu family descendants had, that they had not been able to grab hold of the chance and instead had internal strife after the founding era. Even if they were now slowly recovering their influence, Yanzhou had no way of hiding the truth. Many Yanzhou governors did not have the Wu family name. This was something that people from other continents would always use to poke fun at Yanzhou, but most of Yanzhou's masses did not mind. Yi Yuan could only sigh. If he were good enough at racing, he would surely have participated in that practice match, but in reality, he was not good enough, and participating at this juncture would only make himself a laughingstock. It was better for him to honestly analyze the other party's capabilities. At 9:30 a.m., the live broadcast started, showing the two teams that had already logged in, fans from both sides, and other players that had qualified for the practice match. That's right, other than the two gaming clubs, 2S and Boom, Fiery Bird's Yanzhou branch had also released 100 spots. These spots were first released to high-level VIP guests, and the remaining spots were then released one by one to other players. Yanzhou's 5 big gaming clubs all had high-level VIP invites, but this time, the other 3 teams were not taking part. Taking part despite not being good enough was asking for a beating. In the broadcast, the backdrop was the map that Fiery Bird had released earlier. The starting point was a village outside the city. At that moment, it was already bustling with excitement. There were a number of black heavy-duty motorbikes on site. Like violent beasts, they were seemingly full of restrained power. Half of the course back tire was exposed, and it was like a Tyrannosaurus Rex that was prepared to start on its hunt. To the people of the new era, it seemed to harness a primitive and intense power beneath its exterior. Electronic dance music was playing in the background as the tones of the commentators got more and more animated. They knew how to drum up the interest of fans and players alike. At the side, some VIP players were controlling their throttles and revving their engines. The roaring of the engine and hysterical shrieks from the fans created a noisy atmosphere. The fans were seemingly in a frenzy, but there was still order. After all, they had also been selected with utmost care. Due to the map being specially designed for the practice match, the road at the start was especially wide. Right at the front were the teams from 2S and Boom. However, it was not their entire main force. Each club had sent 5 members to be their representatives. They were clad in their esports club's uniform. Behind them were the other players who had decided to take part and had managed to obtain a spot and the usage of T-Rex. The players were in all sorts of their own attire. Some had on their insignias while others were armed to the teeth with all sorts of in-game equipment. The dynamic electronic dance music came to an abrupt end and the entire site was silent, but it was soon filled by hysterical shrieks and shouts. This signified that the race was about to start. With a loud explosive sound, the front 10 raced off the blocks. The seemingly large and cumbersome heavy-duty motorbikes finally set off without any restraint. The rumbling of the engines unleashed a brutal energy. With a heavy discharge of smoke and large power outputs, the machines were telling people that, although the exterior might seem cumbersome, it was a 2-wheeled racing monster. Behind the 10, the other players followed behind in succession, but their competitive spirits were not as intense. They were just following behind to get a kick. Due to some of them not having enough practice or being too excited to properly control the bikes, they crashed their bikes not long after starting and immediately disconnected. This meant to say that, if this was reality, they would have already lost their lives. For every crash, the players nearby were all affected and crashed out together. Although those players did not immediately disconnect, the impact of the crash was too brutal and both man and machine suffered damage. In the game, the pain induced was lowered and hence did not have such an intense feeling. Those few people no longer had any desire to continue following and so voluntarily disconnected and went to watch the live broadcast. This practice match had a spectator view from all angles. Therefore, those watching the live broadcast could watch from the front, sides, and even top down. The cameras for the broadcast were mainly following the 10 people at the front. The people at the starting line were prepared to go offline to watch the broadcast when they saw a figure suddenly appearing. He was riding a T-Rex, and they immediately knew that he was one of the 100 players that had managed to obtain a spot for the race. Hey brother, you are late. They already set off. I'm afraid you have no way of catching up, but just follow behind and enjoy yourself, someone at the starting line said. The figure riding the black motorbike nodded his head and set off. The ear-splitting roar of the engines echoed all around. Who is that? Another player at the starting line asked. Looking at his attire, he is neither from 2S or Boom. I don't see any emblem either, so I have no idea. Who cares about him? He's definitely a player who came to join in on the fun. Hurry and disconnect to watch the live broadcast, there is nothing for us to watch here. Right. The live broadcast is more important. Who cares about the others? Zordon has summoned the almighty Black Ranger. TBH, I'm clueless to his identity. Fiery Bird's Yanzhou branch, live broadcast studio. The practice match started. Just started. Other than the 10 people from 2S and Boom, of the other 100 players that obtained a spot, 99 are already online. The last one just came online. Just now he wasn't even on. Don't mind it. After all, these people are just here to have a bit of fun. Just take it as giving VIP guests the benefit of having an up-close interaction with the clubs. When they come online or how they want to play is all up to them. All you people need to do is follow the action between those few people from 2S and Boom closely. Understood. Of the 110 people, 8 of them have disconnected 1 minute in. All from the back. In a bit, the gap between the front and back will increase. Pay attention to where the cameras are pointing at. Got it. 2 more have disconnected. Only 100 left. No idea how many will remain after 5 minutes. There will be more crashes once we enter the city. Got to let them suffer a little and not let them think this is a walk in the park. Someone at the side was staring at the screen, flabbergasted. That one at the back, so fast. Which? The few others stretched their necks over to take a look. This dot. It was in last place, but now it's already in the middle of the pack. The person in front of the screen pointed out a little dot. The map had been minimized and all participants appeared as bright dots on this screen. It's easier to crash when you are going too fast, someone else said. Everyone knew what he meant. The faster one went, the narrower the field of vision and the harder the vehicle became to maneuver. Racing along a straight path without anybody was fine, but when it came to speeding along turns and bends, it was easy to lose control. Another one at the front crashed, 99 left. I shall see when this fellow crashes and disconnects. The start of the race course was flat and smooth ground, and the road was a straight path with not many turns. After a while, the number of bends would gradually increase, and the number of mishaps would increase alongside it. Just as Fiery Bird's staff had predicted, 5 minutes later, from the 99 players, there was a sudden drop to 67. Those at the back were getting further and further away. They also probably felt no reason to continue racing and had voluntarily disconnected. As this continued, the number of players dropped to 51. A few entertainment workshops saw this as a chance to increase their popularity too. Fiery Bird's public broadcast prohibited others from taking videos, so they could only take screenshots. Every time there was a crash, they would excitedly snap away and post it up, letting everyone know what the crashes looked like and adding commentary, making the crashes even more interesting. When speeding along bends, even a professional race driver was faced with the dangers of crashing at any time. The screenshots kept getting uploaded, and they were taken from all angles. Included were the players who'd crashed out of the server, other players that had been affected by the crash, and which players had withdrawn due to injuries. Even for those that wore professional racing gear or were armed to the teeth with all sorts of in-game equipment, once they were riding at high speeds, the crashes were too brutal and they would disconnect immediately. To them, this was merely a game and the accidents were virtual. They took it as all fun and games. Although this was just a source of laughter for the people watching the live broadcast, for people who had been professional drivers, when riding the bike, they already did not differentiate between game and reality. These people treated it seriously even though it was just a game. At the front, 2S esports clubs Kazemo and Boom esports clubs Olaf had gradually pulled ahead of the others. 2S and Boom esports clubs had a total of 10 people participating, and they had pulled away from the other players after starting. Furthermore, as they were the focal point of this competition and were coined the front 10, the cameras focused mainly on them. The rest of the players were filmed by a different camera, but as the race went on of the front 10, the distance between the two professional race drivers, Kazemo and Olaf, and the other 8 kept increasing. The cameras following the front 10 were split once more, with a portion following Kazemo and Olaf's head-to-head race while the remaining members of the front 10 had one other camera following them. Kazemo was a braggart, but as a professional esports athlete and professional race driver, he adjusted rather well to this race. At that moment, the race had been underway for 20 minutes. One of the participants from 2S Esports Club who was last among the front 10 had not heard any sounds from behind him for some time. He thought to himself, see, amateurs are just amateurs. You just can't compete with us professional gamers. Even if we are not professional racers, as esports athletes, there is still a gulf between us and amateur players, and we will crush you. Since the start, not a single one of you outsiders could do anything. When they'd first gotten their hands on the bikes, they had still ridden carefully, but later on, as they got more familiar with the technique, they had been able to push themselves even more and truly harness the power of the machines as their intense competitive spirit showed. They were enjoying themselves and showing off at the same time, attracting even more fans. But still, the one languishing at 10th spot was not contented. Ahead of him at 9th spot was a Boom member. He had to overtake that Boom member. In 2 more turns, they would be entering the city. The difficulty would increase then, so it would be best to pass before the city. Why was there noise from behind? And it sounded like it was getting closer. Someone had caught up. Doubting someone could actually catch up, he grew distracted. Getting flustered, he made an error and went off a bend and smashed into a hillside. The 9th place Boom member heard the sound of the crash behind him and felt pleased. Haha, crashed. Regarding a member of the opposition camp who had been following him tightly and finally crashed, in his heart he was secretly delighted. Until now, the front 10 only had 1 crash, what a disgrace. Later on, they could gloat over 2S. But very quickly, the 9th place gamer's delight disappeared as he heard the sound of an approaching engine behind him. How could it be? Didn't he crash into a hill? Even if he did not disconnect upon crashing, but even continuing to race, there's no way he could catch up that fast. But if it was not the other party, who could it be? Thinking of a possibility, the gamer in 9th place was unable to contain his curiosity and turned his head behind to take a peek. Just one peek and it was too late for regret. From time to time, rocks would appear on the highway. They were rather large, and as long as one was alert, they were simple enough to avoid. Turning back for a look, he realized that the person behind was in default system attire and wasn't the adversary that had been following him tightly. He was surprised, and that rider was gaining on him at high speed. His heart panicked, and in those few moments of carelessness, when he faced the front once more, he realized that there was a rock in his path. He tried evading, but the bike brushed against the rock and skidded forward as the rider was thrown off. Tumbling on the ground, the corner of his eyes caught sight of the onrushing bike. At its speed, even if the person could evade the rock, he could only continue speeding forward into his path. Screech. Tires revolving against the ground created an ear-splitting screeching as the engine produced a roar that sounded strained. The sounds were more than enough to make anyone nearby disorientated. The 9th place racer was still hurtling forward, his field of vision was all over the place. All he could see was a black shape brush past him. As if a specter had ghosted past him, in a flash it was gone. All that was left was the rippling wind created by him. The sound of friction produced by the tires disappeared, and the roaring of the engine gradually grew farther away. He struggled to get up and look at the surrounding ground. Beside him were only strange tire marks and the smell of burnt rubber. Even though it was only a game, he could feel cold sweat dripping down his back. He felt as if he had just survived a narrow miss by the foot of a colossal monster and had somehow lived to tell the tale. His heart was beating rapidly as he stood there in a daze, his mind still not recovering from that scene. When he sobered up, he looked down the highway, the other person's figure could still be seen. As for the people operating the camera for the live broadcast following this area, they forgot their original motive in that moment. Their eyes had been captured by that thrilling scene. Those online watching this feed were also stunned. The FCK, who was the lunatic who just went past. No idea that scene was just too thrilling. Just a little more and it would have hit. It did not hit just now, right? Evading like this is possible. The bike did not flip over. Did anyone see clearly how he dodged it? When I try to recall what happened, my head is blank. Professional screen capturers. Did you all manage to snap anything? Perhaps an esports club's main member went into battle without their attire. Probably not. If it was from another gaming club, with his skill, there would be a lot of fanfare and he would definitely be wearing his uniform. What that guy was wearing was just the default system attire. Could it be a professional race driver who decided to play around? Perhaps. That can't be right. At yesterday's public announcement, other than 2S's Kzemo and Boom's Olaf, there were no other professional race drivers taking part. Then who was the person who passed by just now? Someone who came over specially to sweep the competition. Ha, 2 out of the front 10 crashed after being spooked. Looking at the situation, who is going to get the last laugh is anybody's guess. Now that there is one more mystery person, who knows how many more he can overtake. Those watching the second camera's feed hurriedly called their good friends to stop watching the main camera feed of the duel between Zemo and Olaf. There was a monster rushing from the back. What's that coming over the hill? Is it a monster? Is it a monster? Anybody heard of this song? The practice match was supposed to be a showdown between the top players from 2S and Boom, but lo and behold, a mysterious player had showed up out of the blue. The audience was ecstatic. Chatter popped up on different online discussion groups. Judging from the way he drifted during his turns, he must be a professional racer. Looks like Fiery Bird might not have been completely forthcoming on the entry list. That might not be the case. It might be a really skilled amateur. Doesn't the saying go, the masters hide among the masses? There was all sorts of speculation online, and the folks at the Yanzhou branch of Fiery Bird were also at a loss. They had a crystal clear picture of the race. They had been tracking the mystery player since he'd surged forward, but they hadn't expected him to sideline two professional gamers as soon as he caught up with the top 10. We screened the premium VIP customers who won entry passes. There was no one with professional racing credentials. If there was, we wouldn't have missed him or her, said a Fiery Bird staffer stationed in the live broadcast hall. Then it must be an amateur professional. A so-called amateur professional was a highly skilled amateur who was as competent as a professional racer or gamer but not properly credentialed. Is it possible it's a bench player from one of the clubs? Not all of their reserve players are credentialed. That's a possibility. In any case, let's keep watching closely. This is an unexpected surprise. For Fiery Bird, the outcome of the practice match wasn't that important. What they cared about most were the viewership figures and whether they could use the appearance of the mystery player to advertise their spin-off brands. The company's technicians would also use the opportunity to test the game. The unexpected development happened to meet everyone's needs, much to their delight. Meanwhile, the virtual projects department at Sci-Fi Wing was also abuzz with excitement. Zhu Wen and company were tuned into the game but had missed the latest development. They had been focused on the duel between Zemo and Olaf among the front runners. They switched views when they read about the mystery player in a discussion group. They switched just in time to catch the mystery player who caught up with the top 10 past two more bikers. I wonder if boss saw this. Let me give him a heads up. He better not miss an exciting development like this. Zhu Wen dialed Feng Zhao's bracelet, but no one answered. He kept getting a busy tone. Maybe boss is busy. Forget it, I'll leave him a message. Underscore. The number of viewers tuning into the second camera grew significantly because of the mystery player who'd broken into the top 10, even dwarfing the viewership of the first camera, which was focused on Zemo and Olaf. He's number 7 now. Looks like he can still pass a few more racers. Remember the screen capture. Don't freeze this time. The folks at Entertainment Workshop and other journalists monitoring the match started zooming in on the mystery player. The loud rumbling of the mystery player's high-frequency motor kept viewers stimulated. The two marquee racers dueling on behalf of their two clubs also noticed the unfamiliar shadow catching up. They didn't know how to lose him. He kept on creeping closer and closer. After entering the city, the roads were clear of pedestrians and other vehicles, but they were narrower than in the suburbs and varied in width. To make way for the practice match, many elements had been removed from this particular layout. Even though the road was dotted with the occasional parked vehicle, which made it slightly crowded, there were no other speeding cars or pedestrians. The players kept zipping along. All a bystander could see was a flurry of shadows dash by. After another turn, the mystery player advanced to 5th place. He's so calm. He's barely made any mistakes, Yi Yun, captain of Big Dipper Club's first team, said while glued to the monitor. This one's a force to be reckoned with. The two players ahead may not be able to stop him, one of his teammates said. Yi Yun thought of something and let out a knowing laugh. We'll see. Let's see which two players are ahead of him. Judging from the lettering on their uniforms, in 3rd place should be Yusuke, the vice-captain of Boom Esports Club, and in 4th is Jabbar from 2S. Hey, those two sly bastards are setting up an ambush. Was this planned? So they could stave off surprises like this? Looks like that's the case. This practice match was never a duel between two teams, but rather a performance by the two professional racers Zemo and Olaf. The others are there to cheer them on and to prevent accidents. And now we have a situation. While 2S and Boom feuded fiercely in public, they were trash-talking ahead of the practice match. If a third party threatened them, they would present a united front. The same rule applied to all of Yanzhou's top 5 esports clubs. Regardless of which of the Big Five were competing, if someone other than the Big Five showed up, then they would join hands and deal with the outsider first. At this point, Big Dipper's team leader cut in. He was completely serious. Stay on, Jabbar and Yusuke. The two of them are about to make their move. The big screen showed the mystery player approaching, on the verge of taking fourth place, but he slowed down suddenly and veered off path. At the same time, Jabbar seemed to make a mistake and flipped. If the mystery rider had stayed where he had been, he would have smashed right into Jabbar or his bike, even if he made a last-minute correction, but the mystery man looked like he had anticipated the move and avoided the obstacle. Watching the scene unfold, Jess, the captain of HWRE Sports Club, winced. A real pro. Great anticipation. No wonder Jabbar couldn't stop him. Jabbar will be able to say he did his job when he gets offline. He did his best. Jean, the vice captain of HWRE Sports Club, nodded in agreement. We've lost another player. Let's see if Yusuke can take him down. If not, it's going to be a race between the top three. Just as Jean finished his sentence, the screen showed Yusuke appearing to lose his concentration during a turn and crashing, ramming into a lamppost by the road. The crash sent the lamp post tumbling. A car was parked on the other side of the road. The top of the lamp post landed on the car, which created a low trapezoid-shaped barricade on the less-than-wide road. Even though the lamppost didn't collapse onto the road entirely, the resulting barricade was enough to halt any forthcoming vehicles. What a dirty move by Yusuke. Who knows how many times he practiced that ahead of time. That's the kind of boldness a vice captain should display. He was much more decisive than Jabbar, crashing himself out of the game. Looks like he should accomplish his mission and stop the threat. Wait. He's not going to stop. The screen showed the silhouette charging forward. The gap between the fallen lamp post and the ground wasn't big enough to fit a person or a car. A car would definitely hit the lamp post. The mystery person would have to stop and figure out a way through or take a detour or different route. Either way would mean a delay. In a high-speed race like this, a delay of 1 second would translate into a bigger cushion for the two professional racers in the lead. He's gonna hit the lamp post if it doesn't stop now. He's going to crash. FCK. Jess, the captain of HWR Club, who was glued to the screen, blurted out an expletive. The silhouette on the screen flew off his motorbike, which turned sideways as he approached the lamp post. The motorbike threaded the gap beneath the lamp post, the sound of screeching tires creating a piercing noise that suggested burning. Just when everyone thought the motorbike was about to collapse, it bolted upright again after clearing the gap between the road and the lamp post. The engine of the erect vehicle roared as it pressed forward. How is that possible? How did he do that? If the motorbike had a little less clearance, he would have been knocked out of the race. But he actually cleared the gap. How did it not collapse at that angle? I feel like he gave gravity the finger. No, I feel like I've been given the finger. I wouldn't have believed it if I hadn't seen it with my own eyes. This was not a lucky coincidence. Viewers watching the live webcast were equally blown away. What they considered impossible happened before their own eyes. The game was a simulation of reality, which meant the player could manage the same move in real life. Yusuke, who was forced offline when his avatar died after knocking down the lamp post, scrambled out of the gaming cabin. Did I shut him down? He blurted at his teammates. His teammates wore a weird expression on their faces and stayed silent. When the sound of the mystery writer's engine from the live broadcast drew Yusuke's attention, he knew he had failed. Yusuke went pale, as if something horrible had happened. What's the lowdown on that fellow? Yusuke asked his teammates. We asked around. He's not from the Big Five. We don't know anything about his background. All we know is that he's scary. He may pose a major threat to us. A professional racer. No, if it were a professional racer, he'd be credentialed. Fiery Bird wouldn't miss that piece of information. Too bad the guy has remained anonymous. All his personal information is blocked. We tried asking Fiery Bird, but they won't look up his profile just because we're curious. Staffers watching the live broadcast at the Yanzhou branch of Fiery Bird were also curious about the identity of the mystery player, but the player's premium VIP status made them think twice. Even if he were a regular customer, unmasking his profile would be a violation of professional ethics. Fiery Bird had strict internal protocols in place. If we can't look up his profile, then let's check when he registered, one staffer suggested. Out of respect for client privacy, they couldn't dig deeper just because they were company staff, especially if the client had chosen to hide his profile, but they could look up his date of registration. He registered from his console on September 1. He only has one account, no others. It's his first time playing one of our games. A newcomer. or someone who just met the age requirement. All Fiery Bird games could be accessed through a single user ID. Even though Battle of the Century had released a few practice platforms this year, Fiery Bird counted many other titles among its library. Folks who met the age requirement would definitely practice with other games before the official release of Battle of the Century. Not necessarily. Maybe it's the first time he's playing one of our games and he registered with us for the first time on September 1. A premium VIP customer who'd registered on September 1 and could deliver blows to 2 of the big 5. Who on earth is this guy? The player might not have been physically healthy, he could have been disabled or infirm. As long as you had a nimble mind and superior hand motor skills, the world was your oyster if you had a gaming console. One of Fiery Bird's former CEOs once said, "Gaming is a window into a person's soul." The mystery man was a shadowy monster lurking in the dark, preparing to bare its sharp claws. I have a hunch something is about to go down. We are left with 3. Never expected that we would have a 3-way fight to the finish for a normal practice match. The other esports clubs were all watching the final struggles of this match. A few members that were training were called over by their captains to come watch. Participating in this practice match were the 10 members from 2S and Boom and another 100 who'd received entry passes, a total of 110. Now, there were 3 left. The others had already crashed out or were left far behind and had no mood to continue racing, instead going offline to watch. Especially for those among the front 10 that had not crashed but been overtaken, catching up was too difficult, so they figured they might as well disconnect earlier and watch the battle in front. Therefore it ended up with only 3 players left online. Zemo and Olaf had set the pace in the race. The distance between them did not widen. At times, Zemo was in the lead, and sometimes Olaf managed to successfully overtake him. However, the times Zemo was ahead were more numerous, and he was now in a good spot to consolidate his lead. Olaf felt a little anxious, but not to the point that it affected his rationality. He was older than Zemo and had more race experience. Perhaps he didn't have as much talent as Zemo, but he was hardworking and more steady. He gritted his teeth and pressed on, maintaining the 20 to 50 meter distance between them. At the front, Zemo felt rather proud of himself, but not to the point where he would forget himself. He knew that he could not afford to be distracted and had to continue maintaining his dominance all the way to the end. According to the map before him, he would be able to leave the city in approximately 10 minutes. After exiting the city, the endpoint would be near. At this moment, Olaf's heart started beating violently. He could sense someone catching up. They were on a Y-shaped bridge. Zemo and Olaf were on one road, and on the other road, a figure appeared. At the junction where the 2 roads intersected, like a flash of lightning, the figure emerged between Zemo and Olaf. The main camera following Zemo and Olaf and the secondary camera following the mystery figure coincided. To think he actually caught up. This was the thought of all the viewers watching the broadcast. Olaf was shaken by the sudden overtaking and nearly lost his balance. Looking forward, the figure was wearing the default black racing attire, and Zemo could not see anything special. Who the hell was this? Not just Olaf, the still leading Zemo's heart starting pounding from the shock. There is still a third person. Other than him and Olaf, there was actually a third professional race driver that had taken part in this practice match. Not possible. Fiery Bird had publicly announced that there were no other professional race drivers taking part. Then who could the person behind have been? If it wasn't a professional driver, could it have been someone from another esports team that had come to wreak havoc? As a professional race driver, Zemo did not make the same mistakes his teammates had made by turning back. Even if he could hear the roaring behind him and his heart was full of curiosity, he still kept his eyes on the road before him. Race drivers only had a forward, they had no backward. All he had to do was keep looking forward. No matter who was catching up to him, no matter where the party was from, he could only continue maintaining his superiority till the end. However, the person that had abruptly appeared made Zemo feel a little pressure. Although Olaf's strength was comparable to his own, as an old adversary, they had competed against each other many times and understood each other's patterns, but this fellow that had suddenly appeared was different. Zemo was totally unable to determine his origin or motives. Due to the sudden appearance of that bike, Zemo increased his speed again. The opponent had been able to chase all the way till this point. If he continued at that speed, Zemo would surely be overtaken. In order to maintain his lead, Zemo had no choice but to continue increasing his speed as well. Even though, by increasing the speed, the maneuverability of his bike would drop and he would be more prone to accidents, Zemo still chose to do this. Because of this appearance by a third party, not only Zemo increased his speed. Olaf, who was still busy chasing, stepped up his speed as well. Having already been left in the dust by the third party, if he was left further behind, he would be losing face. The three shapes on the road sped along, chasing the one ahead tightly. The two professional race drivers and the one suspected professional driver made this race even more intense. At every bend, they seemed to float through at a slanted angle, giving viewers the impression that they were going to skid off the track at any moment. Even those watching the broadcast began to feel anxious and excited. With that sort of vehicle in front of me, I would even have trouble lifting it up. Yet those three can operate it in such a manner. Even if it is only in a game, it is very hard to come by. Just like an artistic performance, impressive. Every time they head into a bend, I always feel that they are going to crash out, slanting so much and not falling over. If it was me, I would have crashed long ago. Those people, probably, mastered exceptional driving skills, like the folklore of car and man as one. It's as if they have achieved a boundary that normal people can never hope to surpass. Some fans revered as they kept their eyes fixated on the screens. However, compared to the viewing masses, as people from the entertainment circles watched, more problems arose. Big Dipper's Captain Yi Yuan said, "Don't you guys feel that? That mystery writer seems to be playing around with them." Yi Yuan's sentence made the others momentarily silent. They did feel it a little, but their hearts were not willing to admit it. Who would operate the bike in such a manner just to play around? Isn't he afraid? With one lapse of concentration, his showboating could fail and he would crash. But they had seen the mystery writer steadily overtaking bike after bike throughout the race, but after catching up, he had seemed to slow down and not overtake. Even though Zemo had already increased his speed, they still had the feeling that the mystery writer could still overtake him. Now, though, it seemed as if he decided to follow Zemo and Olaf and play around with them. "Anytime now," Big Dipper's captain said. "The city's exit is coming up. This race is coming to an end. Now that he has caught up. Surely he doesn't intend to remain in second place." Zemo was feeling very vexed. He realized that he could not shake off the person behind him. Even Olaf had not been so troublesome. Not just the viewers watching, even Zemo had a slight feeling that he was going to be overtaken, and that made him even more anxious. Even if he lost to Olaf, he would not feel this way, but losing to someone whose origin was unknown, that was not going to be pleasant. He did not bother to guess where this opponent had come from, but Zemo's intuition told him that this opponent's aim was probably himself. As if a penetrating pair of eyes were fixed on him from inside the darkness, ready to pounce at any moment. Zemo felt sweat dripping down his back. He kept telling himself, "Stay calm, stay calm." But as time passed, Zemo was unable to calm down. Rarely was there anyone able to press him this hard. The only one able to exert similar pressure was his own racing instructor, but even the pressure his instructor exerted was incomparable to this situation. As they got closer and closer to the city exit, the feeling of unease in Zemo's heart became even more intense, until his sharp sense of hearing heard the change in the sound of screeching tires and the roar of the engine. The opponent wanted to overtake. Zemo instinctively shifted his vehicle to the side to obstruct, sealing off the opponent's path for overtaking. He was not willing to give up the pole position and so chose to block off the person behind. But in the next moment, Zemo knew that things were going to take a turn for the worse. The opponent had done a feint, and at the moment Zemo shifted to the side, that person rushed past him from the other side. In past races, Zemo had used this method numerous times to overtake others, but he had never expected that today, at this race, he would be the one falling for it. At that moment, time slowed down for Zemo. He could only stare blankly as a black motorbike with no designs or insignias went past him. No insignias whatsoever. Who the hell was he? The lead he had protected all the way had actually been lost. Just like that. At this sort of speed, one had to be absolutely focused at all times. Until now, Zemo had done very well, but now after being overtaken by that figure, Zemo was feeling disheartened and beaten. So much so that he felt a sense of hatred. Creak, crash. Zemo smashed into a fence at the roadside. He was flung off his bike and tumbled across the road, but as a race driver, his reflexes were better than others, and he knew how to protect himself in the event of an accident. Even though it had been a brutal crash, he was still able to prevent himself from disconnecting straight from the crash. Behind, Olaf had also made an emergency brake, as after Zemo had been flung from his bike, he had landed in Olaf's path. Olaf knew that this was not intentional and it was only an accident, but regardless, with one crashing and the other braking, both of them had no way of catching up. But contrary to what Olaf had expected, the bike right at the front did something. Its rear tire lifted off from the ground as the front tire stayed stuck to the ground and continued rolling forward, as though it was doing a handstand. Hanging in the air, it did a 180-degree turn as it rotated to face Zemo and Olaf. At the moment where the rear tire fell to the ground, it was as if a galloping colossal beast had come to a halt. The screeching of the tires and roar of the engines had stopped. This motorcycle coin T-Rex had finally ceased its engines, but the smell of burning rubber still remained. The opponent just sat silently on his bike in the distance, watching them. The default helmet he wore blocked out his image, and there were no designs or insignia on his attire or bike to determine his identity. But the way that the opponent had toyed with them, this person was not to be taken lightly. Olaf, who was still seated on his bike, and Zemo, who had not disconnected after crashing but could not get up right away, were feeling nervous. Olaf had a feeling that he ought to lower his head slightly. At this moment when Olaf and Zemo thought that this mysterious rider was going to mock them or show a few rude hand signs, the mystery rider chose to disconnect straight away. Broom broom mutafuckers. You do not know Dawa. He actually went offline. Then why did this master take part in the first place? Aren't racers supposed to give it their all until the finish line? How come he went offline before he crossed the finish line? Folks watching the live broadcast were a bit disappointed. They were thinking the three leaders would get into a discussion or, better yet, start trash talking. That would have made for more exciting viewing. Even an extra word would do. But that 180-degree turn at the end was so cool. This guy is truly a master. Who knows who he is? I'm offering $100 for the answer. Please repost. 1,000 for the answer. Anyone who knows what this dude is all about, contact me in private. I'm going to become his disciple. So no one is curious what the folks at 2S and Boom are thinking. Underscore 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 underscore. Regardless of what the folks tuning into the online discussion were thinking, the members of 2S and Boom weren't in good moods. Anyone in the same position wouldn't feel great. The two clubs were hoping to build their exposure with a practice match before the official launch of the game, maybe act cool and interact with fans a bit, but lo and behold, someone had crashed their party. Zemo couldn't keep competing. All he could do was go offline. Meanwhile, it was impossible for Olaf, who was blocked, to continue as well, so he went offline soon as well. After the end of the broadcast, journalists filed in a frenzy, as if they were high on crack. The fact that someone had crashed 2S and Boom's party was big entertainment news. Someone had messed with Yan Zhao's Big Five of gaming. This was bound to draw a lot of attention. Some speculated the mystery rider was an amateur professional racer, while others said he was a professional gamer. Some wondered if he was someone who couldn't become a racer because of a physical disability and thus lived vicariously through racing games. Several well-known racing teams in Yan Zhao even took out ads offering top dollar to the mystery man who'd passed Zemo and Olaf. Physical disability wasn't an issue. The mystery rider could join as a driving coach. His salary would be negotiable. Folks in the racing industry kept probing each other to no avail. There was also all sorts of speculation in esports circles, which also led nowhere. The mystery rider wouldn't be identified unless Fiery Bird decided to unmask him publicly. Meanwhile, Zemo was being grilled by his teammates. That fellow is definitely a professional. Either a professional driver, a professional gamer, or both, Zemo said, wearing a sullen expression. Anyone could tell that Zemo was in a terrible mood. This was a direct slap in the face, not to mention on a live broadcast before an audience of tens of millions. Such a major face-losing event was a deadly blow to Zemo, who had been confident he would win the race. I feel like he was targeting me, Zemo said. Did you piss someone off? Jabbar regretted the question as soon as it came out of his mouth. They all knew what kind of personality Zemo had. There were plenty of people who took issue with Zemo. Emboldened by his quick wit and gaming skills, this kid was way too obnoxious for his own good. He had sowed plenty of hatred. This time, he'd probably pissed off some big shot. If they had something against Zemo, they could have just spoken out. There was no need to be so ruthless, another teammate mumbled. Other teammates kept their mouths shut. They knew that words alone wouldn't ground Zemo. Only concrete action was enough to deliver a rude awakening. Regardless of what the club thought of the incident in private, they had to defend Zemo in public. They were a team. Captain Shehi noticed that Zemo was in bad emotional shape, so he signaled to the others to stop the line of questioning and then looked toward his deputy, Abu, who had just joined the group. Have we figured out anything about his background yet? Abu shook his head. Fiery Bird said he's a premium VIP customer who masked his profile. Out of respect for client privacy, they can't tell us anything. Bang. Zemo slammed his fist on the table in front of him. His eyes were bloodshot and he was panting. He was absolutely furious. It's okay. Next time I see him, I'll definitely be able to identify him, Kazemo said while grinding his teeth. Shehi glared at him. Kazemo, you're losing it. My apologies. Kazemo was on his best behavior in front of the captain. As obnoxious as he was, he didn't dare throw a tantrum in front of the captain and his deputy. This is a good thing for you, Shehi said. Don't think that you're invincible just because you perform well in training. There are so many masters out there. This was a single event contest for warm-up and publicity purposes. It has no impact on the official contest when the game is launched. Just treat this as a lesson. Okay, let's meet in the conference room for a post-mortem. The players who'd crashed in the race because they'd been distracted started getting jitters. They knew they would be singled out in the meeting. All the leading esports clubs held meetings to analyze the practice race, and folks in the racing community seized the opportunity to gain exposure, offering expert advice on how to negotiate turns skillfully. Stuntmen kept repeating the seemingly impossible moves made by the mystery driver. Stunt drivers could pull it off, although it was more difficult using vehicles from the old era. The captain of a stunt driving team posted footage showing off the moves of him and his teammates on Fiery Bird's practice platform. Even though they weren't riding the T-Rex model featured in the practice race, their footage still drew plenty of viewers. Hands-off handlebars, backward flips, stationary spinning off the back wheel, drifting, all these tricks were replicated, as was the mystery rider's now famous move of sliding his motorbike through the gap between the fallen lamp post and the ground. Viewers got a great fix. The captain of the stunt driving team, at the end of the video, said, "What you're seeing is edited footage?" More often than not, these stunts took 10 or even 100 attempts to complete. Take this stunt, for example, and this one. He pointed at two screen caps. Threading the gap under the lamppost and the front wheel slide plus 180-degree spin had both taken many attempts to stage successfully. Completing those moves on that motorbike at that speed is no small feat. You've got to be a professional stunt driver. To be perfectly frank, for professional drivers like us, we either focus on our stunts and technique or we strive for speed in competitive racing. People who can balance both aren't unheard of, but someone who can push the envelope on both fronts has got to be a gamer. No one is that crazy in real life. Otherwise they would have ended up in the hospital already. Repeated injuries take a severe toll on your body. So my take is that the mystery rider is a master gamer. As a professional stunt driver, the captain had great credibility. Other professional stunt drivers and race drivers soon posted messages seconding his opinion. In no time, journalists had picked up on the consensus of the racing and stunt driving community. Mystery Man was a master gamer who excelled at racing games. Only in a computer game could you walk away unscathed regardless of how many times you fell. No bones would be broken. Your life wouldn't be on the line. But it was still unknown exactly which master gamer the Mystery Man was. This became one of the biggest puzzles ahead of the release of Battle of the Century. After the practice race, Fiery Bird released a highlight reel. Viewers who had picked the wrong camera view during the live broadcast and missed out could finally see how Mystery Man had clawed his way to the leading pack. Watching the live broadcast was one thing. Taking in the highlights was a different story. During the live broadcast, viewers were most concerned with ranking, crashes, and overtaking, but watching the edited highlights, admiring the shadows zipping by against an old-era backdrop transported them back to that period in history, filling them with an excitement bred by the mixing of old-era culture and the passion of race driving. Racetracks, old forms of transportation from the old era. Today's viewers couldn't fathom life in the old era, but watching the race helped them relate. Back then, there were people who shared our passion. The period of destruction lasted 100 years, and it had been 500 years since the founding of the new era. Some 600 years had gone by. Had there also been a group of youngsters riding old-era motorbikes, zipping down the same urban track 600 years ago? No one stayed young forever, but there were always young people milling around. Underscore. After logging out of the game, Feng Zhao sat by a window to enjoy the breeze so he could calm down. He saw the missed call on his bracelet and dialed back. "Hey, boss. Did you see the match between 2S and Boom?" Zhu Wen sounded excited. He was probably fresh from a discussion about the race. "I did," Feng Zhao responded. "Competing in the race counts, right?" "Hehehe, it felt really good seeing 2S and Boom stumble. But we don't know who the mystery man who took down Kazemo and Olaf is. He must be pleased with himself right now, no? What pleasure is there in bullying a few kids?" Feng Zhao said. He just wanted to teach them a lesson. He didn't feel cocky. Kazemo had a big mouth and needed a spanking. That's all that had been. Feng Zhao had already held back on account of Kei Zimo's young age. If he'd really wanted to go all out, he could have made Kei Zimo feel 10 times or even 100 times the pain. Bullying kids. That is to say, the mystery man is a seasoned racing game player. Anyway, it felt good to watch Kei Zimo crash. Didn't he just mouth off in an interview 2 days ago? Now he has to eat his words. Right, I almost forgot to tell you. We just got word that Fiery Bird's Yanzhou branch has invited us to a press conference. I asked around. They're having a few press conferences before the official launch to launch new ads and related merchandise. In any case, we'll definitely be receiving gifts. When is it? Feng Zhao asked. 2 p.m. the day after tomorrow, dinner included. Who else will be attending besides us? We are attending as members of the Polar Light Project team. Apart from us, there will be folks from esports clubs and the media. Oh, 2S and Boom will be attending. Got it. I'll be in the office in the morning that day and head over with you guys in the afternoon. Like and subscribe.